Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with your host, Christina Nitchman.
Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. This is your host, Christina Nitchman. Each week on Savvy, we support individuals and successful individuals in sharing their expertise, knowledge, tips, and stories with the world. When our government ceased to protect the lives, liberty, and property of we the people, we've reached a time for change. Today, we're joined by David M Zuniga of America Again, whose mission is to empower citizens in a peaceful restoration of American liberty. Find out more at americaagain.net. Welcome to Savvy Business Radio. How are you?
I'm well, Christina. Thanks for having me on your show.
I'm very happy you gave me a call. You're doing some phenomenal work with you and your organization. You're a founder of America Again. You're looking to bring the citizens of this great nation together. Share a little bit about how America Again came to be and what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. Well, what we're trying to accomplish first, America Again is a charitable perpetual trust, and it's a member organization. And our mission is to recruit and then train and support and organize the willing remnant, whoever wants to, of the American people to enforce the Constitution. In other words, to finally live out the theory we've always had of popular sovereignty that you read in the Constitution, to actually live that out. In other words, live as self-governing sovereigns over our public servants. So the book that I offer for free on our website, americaagain.net, if you go to that site, you go to the homepage, scroll down to the bottom, and it says PDF book. And you click on that blue button, and there's a book called Fear the People, because they should fear the people. And that book is free. You can pay $43.50 at Amazon if you want to buy the physical book, but the PDF is actually a better resource for you because all of the links are live in the book. There are hundreds of links in the book, and they're all live. So I recommend you get the free book, Fear the People. So what we talk about today, Christina, all of it is covered in the book, Fear the People. On the website, americaagain.net, we have a 3-minute video. We have a 12-minute video that goes into detail about our action plan. And then we have a 1-hour feature film called America Again, the movie, that explains all of the 7 classes of felony crime that the U.S. Congress has been committing for over 150 years. It just kind of walks you through the charging statutes. So you can find those videos on the site. Then at the bottom of the homepage, like I said, you can download the free PDF edition of my latest book, Fear the People. I really ask that you as a listener, you as an entrepreneur, you as a mom and as a business owner that care about this country and our future, please download my free book. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything. It's 82 pages long. It's very short, very fast. I wrote it at about an 8th grade level, so we all get it. I didn't put a bunch of gobbledygook in it. So there's a big red button on the homepage at americaagain.net. It says Take Action, big red button. If you click on that one, it'll give you our plan of action for this year and next year, and then it'll give you the instructions for calling into our Sunday night national conference calls. Every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Central, we have a national conference call. We do brainstorming, we do planning for the action we're taking. We don't just sit around and chew the fat. We are planning action, we explain it, et cetera. So, Christina, let me give a quick bio sketch because you asked about this.
Okay.
Explain why I thought, why I believe that God prepared this engineer from South Texas and my brother, another engineer from Southern Oregon, why he prepared us to launch this mission called America Again. I grew up on a ranch called the Big O Ranch in Laredo, Texas, 50 miles away from the Lazy G Ranch, where Jeff Bezos used to spend his summers as a kid. I attended an all-boys classical day school from 4th grade to graduation to 12th grade. We raised cattle. When I was older, I taught scuba for 6 or 7 years. I flew as a missionary pilot in Mexico for a few years. I became a licensed architectural engineer, and over 28 years, I designed all kinds of buildings, commercial, institutional, retail, industrial. Let's see. For 2 years, I was an editor for a technical book publisher in Massachusetts. I did a lot of other stuff. I mean, over the year, I'm 61. I was a home builder, commercial contractor, real estate developer. I formed the boards and planted 4 K-12 classical Christian schools in Iowa, North Carolina, and Texas. What else? Before founding America Again, for 20 years, I was a very passionate proponent of tax honesty. I thought that was the answer. Defund them. And I've been and have remained a law-abiding non-taxpayer for almost 20 years now. And I have a hobby site called taxhonestyprimer.com where I explain why America's filers are 4 times more likely per capita than the 67 million non-filers to be chased around by Congress's enforcers at the IRS. Anyway, that's a separate thing. I thought that tax honesty was going to save the day. I finally realized, no, you know what? If tax honesty grows to more than half the people, they will just bring in their Trojan horse, the fair tax, and that's revenue neutral, and they'll just get us that way. So, and I mention all of this background, all the stuff I've done in my life, because a lot of this experience led to launching America Again. Specifically, I'll tell you how it was founded. The day I decided to do this, and it was really an amazing day. It was 9/11. Here I was an engineer. I'd been doing structural analysis and design for decades at that time. And here I watched on TV the first 3 occasions ever in history of axial implosion, free fall velocity, pulverizing, pyroclastic collapses of steel high-rise structures. This had never happened in history. Now it happens 3 times in one morning, and all of this supposedly attributed to fire-induced collapse.
Yes.
Sorry. No. Yeah. As a structural engineer, and I'm, like hundreds of other engineers that have joined architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, we say, sorry, folks, not believing it. So anyway, right there, I said, whoa, this is George Orwell stuff. The gloves are off. And I just decided, I've got 6 grandkids. I've got to take action. This is absurd. Yeah. So I took 14 months off of my engineering practice and I bought an old RV and put it under a big oak tree in the Texas Hill Country and set it up. And my wife stayed in Laredo on the ranch while I studied 110 books, countless founding documents, websites out the wazoo. I collected so many Post-it notes and books and marked up stuff. That little place looked like a hovel. And then I started collecting fellow volunteers that said, okay, let's define the threat and let's work the solution. As a contractor, as a developer, as an engineer, as a school founder, as a tax honesty guy, I had all this background in, find the problem, trace it to its source, work the solution. So over the past 8 years, myself and 23 other volunteers have invested a little over 25,000 hours in R&D of what we think is the only full spectrum solution in America. And all of this, I think, I attribute it to the grace of God. I don't say that I'm anything. I just happen to be in the right place. And all of the people that have worked on this team have just done a fantastic job. So we discovered this, Christina, of all the things you see out there, because we went and we canvassed every Save America solution we could find, online and offline. And we said, all right, who's got what? Does it fix it? What does it fix? Is it long-term, et cetera? We couldn't find a full spectrum solution. So we said, all right, to apply a solution to what our problems are in this country, first you have to know what the real problem is. And people think, everybody's thinking, especially now in this election year, and this happens to us every 2 years, we get pulled by the nose into this thing that it's politics, and it's government corruption.
Every election day, that it's one party or the other that's going to save us. But, over the past 20 years, like you, and it's actually before even 9/11, I've been really researching and trying to discover things on my own. What's working, what's not working, what's the working behind the screen, the odd behind the curtain, and and it's amazing. I've become to realize that really there is no 2-party system. It's really
there isn't.
There isn't. They're the same people hiring both parties, and it looks a little different on the side because one Democratic side will maybe focus more on more personal needs, like, can gays get married or such, and the other will be like, no, they can't. But behind the working scenes, what they do in the country to keep things going, keep us at war and whatever, are basically the same people running the show. It's the corporations, big, huge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is, and I'm going to explain something here because this is an important thing, Christina, to properly organize our thoughts. We have to first categorize, like I said, categorize the solution by knowing what the problem is. If you keep coming up with solutions to something that's not really the problem, you're not going to get it. Look, Washington, D.C., first to know who the parties are. Washington, D.C. is the most ruthless, lawless, powerful city-state on earth, period. That's number one. If you don't know that, you've never lived in D.C. or worked in D.C. And its ignorant victim is America first. And then a good portion of the world. Like you say, the wars, all of it. The thing is, the politicians aren't the key players. See, they're, like you say, they're the lapdogs of our real domestic enemy that's organized crime. And it's in industries of every stripe. And I'm not blowing conspiracy theory smoke here. Look,
absolutely not.
This is well established. Let me just walk you through quickly the history of organized crime. Okay, in 1935, a book comes out called War is a Racket, written by the most highly decorated officer in Marine Corps history, General Smedley Butler. He wrote this little book. It's about a 50-something. It's a real classic. I mean, it's sold millions of copies. You can get it almost free on the internet. So he wrote War is a Racket, and he goes chapter by chapter by chapter through the actual racketeering of the Marine Corps, the Army, the Navy, what they did for the different banks, what they did for the sugar companies, for the military contractor. He actually shows where the bodies are. That's why he called it War is a Racket. Okay, he travels the country all over the 1930s. Nobody listened, Christina. Wow. They didn't listen to this man. And Smedley Darlington Butler was like the most, okay. And then in 61, 25 years later, here comes President Dwight Eisenhower, right? 5-star Army general. Okay, very decorated guy. He knew what he was talking about. He waits till the last day in office as president. In his farewell address, he coined the term, I know you remember this, military-industrial complex. Absolutely. That's where we get the term. And here's Dwight Eisenhower, 5-star general, 25 years later, saying exactly what Smedley Butler said. This is a racket. It's a monster. It's a machine. It's going to destroy us. Stop this. Stop it. You got to stop it. But he didn't say how. He didn't give anybody any idea how. So the banking industry, the oil industry, the military industry, they all work just hand in glove and always have since Lincoln's time. People don't know that the oil, if you read Perloff's book, The Prize, it's all about very, huge bestseller. The Prize is about the oil industry. I didn't understand that the oil industry began in Lincoln's time. I didn't know that. So anyway, these things have been going on so long. In 1969, that was in 69 when Eisenhower said, it's the MIC. Watch out, people, you got to stop them. In 69, Donald Cressy, he was a criminologist, trained guy. He knew what he was talking about. He wrote this 350-page book called Theft of the Nation. It's a detailed, comprehensive, where the bodies are buried, who's doing what, indictment of D.C. organized crime. Now, this is a guy, he's a criminologist. He deals with organized crime. He says, hey, guys, this is organized crime running D.C., organized crime. Do you get it? But again, Cressy, if you read his book, it's a great book, but he doesn't propose a viable answer.
When we've had these really decorated generals and the criminologists who have great credibility behind their name, why do most Americans not know this or turn their back to it and say it's not true, it's not valid, it's just conspiracy? Why do most people not look to go further and say, hey, let me look what's going on here?
That's the wrong question, though, Christina, because here's why it's the wrong question. Because if you go back in history, you can go back and listen to Socrates, go back and listen to Plato, listen to these guys, and they complained about the same things we complain about today. The masses are dumb and they don't care. They're ignorant and they're apathetic. You know what? They always have been. They always will be. Most people in most societies have always been apathetic, and they don't care. They care about feeding themselves and about sex and all that. They don't care about important things. That's just humanity. That's the way it is. You don't need, and we're going to get into that in a minute, you don't need majorities to do law enforcement. Half of 1%, I'm going to describe something in a minute, our mechanism, half of 1% of Americans is more than enough. That would be a surfeit to be able to turn this organized crime over, okay? So, by the way, there's one other book I want to mention, Tom DiLorenzo, great guy at Loyola University, professor. He wrote in 2012 a book called Organized Crime, The Unvarnished Truth About Government. It's not as technical as Cressy's book in 1969, but it's a lot. It covers a lot more ground. He goes chapter by chapter by chapter, showing you just how this really is organized crime that's running D.C. So, if the problem is organized crime, right, the solution can't be politics, right? What is, let's say, what is secession going to do, or nullification going to do, or all these people that are taking the streets or want to take to the streets with their firearms and citing the Second Amendment and not even knowing what they're trying to accomplish? What is any of that going to do to stop Washington, D.C. organized crime? Tell me.
Nothing. I was just going to say, in fact, all it will do is have people think, oh, look at those radical, crazy people who are putting our lives in danger. Those citizens need to be stopped, and they'll call in, if need be, the National Guard and military to stop them and put them away and take care of them. So, no, it wouldn't do anything.
Precisely. And it's just like when you look at what I call the Bundy jumpers, the Bundy family in Nevada and then in Oregon doing these things, calling themselves militia when they're anything but, and going out there to create havoc with, arms. I'll tell you, if we don't understand that the problem is organized crime in Washington, D.C., then we can't get the solution. So, and there's other stuff. There's other supposed solutions like this Pandora's box, constitutional convention. Why rewrite the Constitution? If they violate the existing one, then they're going to violate an amended one just as easily. I don't know what they're thinking. The other thing is, I was a big part. I mean, I spent a lot of days talking to Tea Party groups. The Tea Party is a political nostrum. It's pabulum. It does nothing. And look, it's done nothing. The Ron Paul Revolution, same thing. All they're doing is adding fuel to the same political fires that don't change anything. So, like I said, when the problem is organized crime, the only solution is law enforcement. All right, so let me tell you how we're planning to do it. America Again, and again, our site is americaagain.net. America Again has three major goals. First, at the state level, because this has to begin in the states. So first, we get 27 more state legislatures to ratify the original First Amendment. The original First Amendment. That was the first article. If you go look at a parchment of the original Bill of Rights, you'll see it has 12 articles. It doesn't have 10, it has 12. The Bill of Rights was 12 articles that were passed by the Congress and sent to the states. Well, the original first one didn't get fully ratified, but it did get ratified by 11 states, including New York. They've already, New York's already ratified it, so they don't have to do it again. But 39 states are still open for ratification of that. And now, what that does, and by the way, I unpack all of this. This is the vital first step. I unpack all of this in chapter 1 of the book, Fear the People. So if you download the book, I'm walking you through this first very vital chapter. We need to go back and ratify the original First Amendment. I talk about why it's important and what it is. Then we have that 12-minute video I talked about. That is also about this step. It shows what that is and why it's important. So I don't want to go into too much detail on it because I know we don't have time. So I said we're going to do three things at the state level. The first one is we get 27 more states to ratify the original First Amendment. Second and third, we get our state legislatures to pass two laws that we're proposing. These are state laws. One restores the local militia in every town, not some little rural outpost, yahoos, toothless gun nuts, but every town should have a local militia. Read the Constitution. It's there.
For people who don't know what a militia is, explain exactly, because they could think that just that picture you just mentioned, toothless.
Right. Yeah, it for sure. Militia is one of those. The militias of the several states. If you read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, it describes we the people describe, we define, we stipulate 17 powers that we're going to give to our servants, to the creature, the thing that we create by the Constitution, which is federal government. So we say, okay, Article 1, Section 8 is the grant of power of those 17 things that we're going to let them do. Mm-hmm. Now, they're doing a million other things, but that's all they're lawfully granted. So one of the things that we say that, in fact, the only thing we say in the Constitution that we have to do, that we the people have to do, it's the only thing in the Constitution we tell ourselves, where we tell ourselves we have to do something. It's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15. And we say in there that the people, that the militia has to, quote, execute the laws of the Union, comma, suppress insurrections, comma, and repel invasions, close quote. Mm-hmm. Now that means the people ourselves in every town. You break it down by town and you say the people ourselves. If you have an insurrection, if you have wackiness going on in the streets, guess who's supposed to be taking care of that? Not the cops. The people themselves organized into their local militia. Now this worked very, very well in colonial America. It could not work very easily and well now because we don't know what the heck we're talking about. We don't know where to start, etc. So I consulted with the number one authority on the militias of the several states, a man who wrote, his name is Dr. Edwin Vieira Jr., and he lives in Virginia, and he has written many books, and he has spoken in many places, but he wrote a 2,300-page the definitive text on the history of the militias in the United States. It's called The Sword and Sovereignty. It's available on Amazon. And it's very hard to read unless you're a lawyer, unless you're really into militia. So I got into that. He wrote another one that's smaller that's called Constitutional Homeland Security. And it's a paperback, and that one's easier to read. And he tells us how even in urban environments, even if you're part of 2,000 people in a high-rise building, you're supposed to have a regular defense unit. People are supposed to know what's around them, know how to take care of business if there's a fire, if there's a flood, if there's a tornado, if there's a hurricane, if there's an earthquake. It's not just about taking up guns and shooting people. The militia did all kinds of stuff. It's what we call first responders. It's what we call homeland security today. That is supposed to be the people ourselves doing it. So if we, now let me back up a minute. If we in the States try to envision this, the first article of the original Bill of Rights says that we should only have no more than 50,000 people in a congressional district. Now, why is that important? Why am I going after that like, wow, that's the main thing? Well, because when you have small congressional districts that are very small, 50,000 people, you're going to have very small races, right? Those races for those seats are going to be very small. Big money can't get involved when you have 6,400 seats in the U.S. House, right? How is big money going to, and when you start looking at that kind of a Congress. Now the U.S. House really is the people's house. This is what the Founding Fathers designed. Tiny districts, small. In fact, in the Constitutional Convention of 1787, in September, the last day of the convention, they were breaking up. Before they left, Nathaniel Gorham came up with a section. He said, hey, 40,000 people is too large. For Article 1, Section 2, Clause 2 of the Constitution. He said, we need to change this. Before we leave, we need to change this. George Washington had not spoken during the entire month, ever since May, since the convention convened. He had not stood up to speak about anything. But that day, he was so concerned about what Gorham was talking about districts being too large at 40,000 people, that George Washington stood up and said, and I cover this in my book, Fear the People. I quote Washington's exact words. He stood up and he said, folks, we need to do this before we leave. Change this to 30,000. They're too big. Districts are too big. And so everybody agreed, and they amended right there on the spot before they left. They amended Article 1, Section 2, Clause 2 to say 30,000.
I've heard two sets of arguments. One is we couldn't possibly have, and you covered this in your book, How You Can, have that many people in the House. And number two, if we were to have organized militia, it would just be chaos because this works so much better having government organized cops and that type of thing. Can you say something to that?
Sure.
That
yeah, we would still have cops and sheriffs and everything else. We don't get rid of that. But let me go to the first one first.
Okay.
If 6,400 seats in the U.S. House is too many, then why is 7,383 seats in the state legislatures not too many? It's the same 320 million people. We have 7,383 seats in our state legislatures all told. 7,383. It's not too many. Now, people will say, yeah, but where are you going to put all those in D.C. where they won't fit? We don't want them to fit in D.C. In 2013, there was an act floated in Congress. It had no chance, but it was called the Mobile Act by California Democrat Eric Swalwell and Republican New Mexico Republican Steve Pierce. And those guys, it was called the Mobile Act, and they were saying, hey, guys, we live back west. We have to travel every weekend to go home. We've got, this is really hard. We have to have another home in D.C. Why are we not living in the 21st century? Why are we not doing, telepresence like so many American companies and so many people around the world? What are we doing here? So they tried that. And, of course, D.C. would not dare let their stronghold be broken. And so that act died a quick death. It didn't even, I think it made it in committee and died right away. Do you know that today, 78% of people in sub-Saharan Africa have cell phone service? Wow. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Imagine a barefoot African herdsman can be, poking his cows with a stick and on his cell phone looking up tomorrow's weather. Okay, that's very cool. But now they're learning English. And you know what? They learn English on their phone. And now they find medical diagnoses for ailments that used to kill people in the undeveloped world because they have a cell phone. Because they have a phone. See, we have technology, but here we are, okay? Now look at us, the most supposedly developed civilization in history, right? Letting Congress operate by 19th century, archaic, Byzantine, very easily corrupted procedures. I mean, you take the calendar committee, you take the rules committee, you take all of their ludicrous 19th century stuff. They do it that way because we can't see what they're doing. So we're saying, no, wait, guys. We have everything we need. In Chapter 12 of Fear the People, of the book, Fear the People, I explain 21 other reform laws besides our first one, which is called the Bring Congress Home Act, and I'll cover that one in a minute. It's the big one. 21 other laws, reform laws that allow us just to scrape back everything that D.C. organized crime has taken from the American people and from our system of government in 150 years. And before that, in Chapter 11 of the book, I explain our America Again indictment engine. And that's an app that'll at least put us on an equal footing with that African herdsman. It'll give us, since all members of Congress, if we can bring them home to work in their own district full time, now their state justice system is going to have jurisdiction over them, see? And our indictment engine app, it's just a set of algorithms that's going to harmonize. Anytime they violate the Constitution, it'll be harmonized with a similar charging statute in their state criminal code. Boom, they're busted. For all kinds of felony conspiracy, all kinds of stuff they do. Christina, they're doing this every day and every week, and we can't bust them because we don't have a mechanism. So simply filing some of these laws should be criminal. It is criminal conspiracy, but we don't have any way to get them. So that's the Indictment Engine app, and that's Chapter 11 of the book. And Chapter 12, I go through a lot more things that we can do once we have that, because once you see what they're doing every day, now you, right at home, right on your mobile device, wherever you are, however busy you are, you, just like that African tribal, tribesman, you can look up Just like you look up the weather right now, just like you look up your stocks or your bank stuff or anything, you will see exactly what your 2 senators and congressmen are doing. It will be scored. It will have a score and probably a color code. And as soon as they're targetable, boom, we're going after them. So you will have control, the same control you should have always had.
Yeah.
So that's kind of America again in a really whirlwind nutshell. Okay, so you see why having 6,400 seats in the U.S. House, when they're spread out, when they're working from their home district in a small lease space, modest lease space, it isn't a problem, right? It's not too big. And by the way, do you know that right now every member of Congress, each member of Congress, spends an average of $11 million a year on his own operation, just staffing at their own $11 million a year. Okay. Some of them have 8 or 9 offices with 20 and 30. What happens to all those offices when they're not there? And they're never there. Okay. They're all of their field. What are those people doing? We don't know. We have no. What kind of business runs this way where your employees set their own salary, set their own, everything, their own working conditions, do everything? I mean, this is bizarre.
And
what we're putting up with.
And even in Capitol Hill, they're acting and treating themselves like kings and queens, living quite large at our expense.
Oh, big time. If you go and you look at how they eat, for instance, go look at the dining rooms and see where your money is being spent, and you will be livid. If you actually spend time on the Hill and see how these people live, it's all at your expense. Do you understand? These are your employees, and they're criminals, and they're working for organized crime. 1%, the top 1% of the top 1% is what actually are the people that actually run this country by owning the U.S. Congress. If we break that, if we bring them home, if we make these local districts of 50,000, if we have them under our thumb, we break all of it, Christina. It all starts. We can start clawing back everything we've lost. This whole idea that our economy is dying and the dollar is dying, it's all a matter of crime. If you stop the crimes, you can start repairing the damage.
Yeah.
So in my book, I walk you through that. In chapter 3, I talk about, okay, what if the dollar collapses? What if this whole criminal thing they're doing, it collapses? What are we going to do? Well, if it happens, right? We still have to get through it. So this is the best plan I know, any of us knows, to get through it and come out a lot better on the other side.
Now, are you, because I'm thinking to myself while I was reading it, that I do not think the organized criminals of Capitol Hill will be very partial to this new idea, and that they will fight hard with the lobbyists to try to prevent it. Do you see obstacles?
Sure, I see a lot of, yes, they're going to be anything but happy. Here's the thing. If the first part, they have already taken action. They took action in 1789. And they said, okay, we passed it. Here it is, First Amendment. And they sent it to the states. They can't take it back. Congress passed this original First Amendment that says 50,000 maximum. That's the biggest. Today we've got districts up to 750,000 people, gerrymandered all to hell, looking like an amoeba with serious back problems. I mean, it's crazy what we've got going here, and everybody knows it. I don't care whether you're Christian or atheist. I don't care whether you're liberal or conservative. You know that the war machine, the banking machine, they run this country by owning these people, and we all want them to stop.
Yes.
Now, telling them to stop until the cows come home is not going to get organized crime to stop. And by the way, if you send 1 or 2 or 5, reformers, Mr. Smith goes to Washington, you know what? That's like sending 1 new driver to a mafia gang, and that driver has a conscience and a heart. Or 1 new bagman or 1 new gunman. He's not going to change that mafia. It's going to continue. So they've given us, by the grace of God, a gift in 1789 that we haven't used. The states, Christina, have the next move. See, we need 27 more states to act. All they need to do is hold the vote. That 12-minute video on our website shows you all about that. We already have the joint resolution written for them. We've got a fact sheet for them. We have the attorneys. We have the mapping consultants, anyway, that do GIS mapping consultants that do just this. They do redistricting maps for a living. That's all they do. They're based out of Reston, Virginia. It's the most highly regarded one in the country. We have all of these people lined up and ready to go. We're ready to do the redistricting tomorrow. Our members will pay for it. We will do that. So a state legislature has no reason to say, no, I don't want to vote to ratify the original First Amendment. The first right in our Bill of Rights. Nope, I don't want to ratify it. Who's going to say that? So politically, I believe we have a very, very, very strong case to just get going, and that's what we're doing. We're moving in these small towns of America. There are over 31,000 towns of under 10,000 people in this country, and that's where we're starting. To small town America, where it's easier to get things started like this, and where you don't have as many very well-heeled, well-schooled political operatives that come and smash you over the head the first day.
Yeah. Being the show hits all of America, not just New York, New Jersey, and the East Coast, what can Americans start doing? Because we talked before the show that just going to vote every 2 years for mayor or city council or president is the minimal.
Won't do it.
Citizen. What can
we have members in Jersey. We have members all over the East Coast. A lot of members in New York. And I can tell you, you have to join. It's $9 a month. And when you join, what we're asking is that in your town, you recruit 3 other people so that you don't feel like you're alone and you're doing this by yourself. And then we show you. We have videos, we have the book, and every Sunday night, like I said, at 8 p.m., we have an open discussion of how to do this. So this is just America rising up at the highest level. We are the highest level. On pages 11 and 12, I think it is, or 12 and 13 of the book, I go through words like, and by the way, you used this word many times when you introduced me, words like nation. We should not use the word nation. Yes, we should use the word republic. There's a big difference between a nation and a republic in terms of civics, in terms of, but things like voter, using the word voter. Do you know how you demote yourself every time you call yourself a voter? Do you call yourself a sitter, a walker, a breather? So why did we turn that into a noun? Anyway, I even, at the beginning of the book, I try to detox you from this thing, we're just the grassroots. What are grassroots? They're under your feet. We're not the grassroots. We're the highest. How does the Constitution begin? We, the people, do ordain, and that we go and ordain a federal government. So we're the top of the pecking order, but we don't know how to be the top. There's 320 million of us, but we don't know how to act like a bunch of people. We only know how to act like individuals that are all beat up and don't know what to do. So this is all about us getting together in small groups, 4 people, and those 4 people will go out and each will get 10 signatures. And so we'll have 40 signatures in an average little town, and we'll do this 2,500 times, and we'll end up with 100,000 signatures to take to the state legislatures. State legislatures. Remember that. Congress can't touch this. They already passed it in 1789. So when we get the original First Amendment passed, ratified, that opens the door for our Bring Congress Home Act, because now you have to fill those 6,400 seats. You've got to go redistrict the states. And so now you and I, Christina, you and I can run. Why don't we run for the House? Well, because we'd have to move to D.C. We'd have to have a multi-million-dollar campaign. We don't know how to. But you don't have to do that when you're going to stay and you're going to work among your 50,000 friends and you're going to, right? It changes everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So notice, this is not changing a thing about our system of government. This is restoring the First Amendment that the first Congress ever said, this is how it's supposed to run. But we couldn't do this until we had the tactical force massing power of the internet. So now we can do what the barefoot African herdsman can do because we have this force massing power of this tech. And so we're going to use this tech.
Yeah. We
have to use this tech now. It's getting really late.
Yes. It is. It's getting almost past the point of no return. And it's interesting because I've heard a lot of arguments over the years. I've become a little frustrated with what I see going on around me. And I think it was about maybe 10, 12 years ago, I had considered running for city council and such. And I started to see a lot of underhanded dealings and such. And I became very like, oh, I don't know if I want to get into this because it's so corrupt. And hearing what you're doing and realizing, no, just the citizens, period, could go out and make a difference. And what I hear, number one, from a lot of people is that, well, no, we're not supposed to do things. We're supposed to let the government and the state run things. And that's how the order of things should be. And really, that's not how the country started. I think that's how we've been conditioned by the powers that be that want us to think that's the best way of being, that we be controlled by those who know better than us how things should be. We should just go along with the status quo.
That is the mindset that I grew up. I grew up in Laredo, Texas. It's right on the Rio Grande, on the river, on the border with Mexico. And from the platform on our windmill, I could stand on that platform when I was a kid and see Mexico right there. And it was a whole different world, and a whole different. Here's what I saw, Christina, and here's what I heard every day of my life for 48 years that I lived on the border. It was a very deep-seated cynicism. And the cynic is someone whose heart is broken, who has no power, who thinks he has no power, and so he's given up, and all he can do is make a joke. He can only make a joke or throw a barb or whatever because he has no power and thinks he never will. And I saw that and heard that, el gobierno hace lo que quiere. All my life I heard Mexicans saying, the government does what it wants. And it breaks your heart. Well, guess what? We're there. But here's the very cool thing about America again, half of 1%. Remember that. I drill that home from the first page of my book, Fear the People. This does not require majoritarianism. Electoral politics does, but this, being America again, does not. If you make minimum wage, but you really give a damn, we want you to join us. If you're an atheist, but you don't mind hearing me talk about Christ every now and then, but you really like what we're doing, we want you to join. If you've always been a Democrat, I don't care. I was a Republican for a long time, and I realized where that party was born. It was born in the bowels of organized crime. Always was. So we start getting through all of that and coming together with what we have in common, which is we all want to really believe, okay, I can do something. I actually can do something. Before I die, I can change the course of history for my kids and grandkids. I really can. I'm not going to sit around. We can. And I show you in the book, Fear the People, I walk you through that step by step. That's where we're headed. That's where we're going. We pray by the grace of God. And again, we have the ability to do it. It's a matter of will we? So that's what I ask anybody listening. Get the book. It's free. Watch the videos, at least the 3-minute video. Watch our videos and just see if it doesn't open your eyes. We've been in this hole for 150 years. I cover a lot of books, but in chapter 4 of my book, it's called American Idol. And that chapter, I walk you through 6 books that open up the Lincoln administration and that war, what I call the war to enslave the states, and show you beyond reasonable doubt that was when American communism began.
Wow.
And I mean communism, definitive communism. 1848 manifesto of Karl Marx has 10 clear points. 8 of those were federal policy by the time Woodrow Wilson was in office a century ago.
Wow.
Guys, communist for the last century, okay? Don't freak out at Bernie Sanders. Don't freak out at Obama. This is just really what I say in the book is, and in my first book, This Bloodless Liberty, back in 2010, I say that what we're seeing here in Europe and here is the collapse of communism. Okay, we're watching the collapse, and we think, especially here politically, we think that we're seeing a lot of Republicans are saying, oh, Obama is bringing communism, and oh boy, look at Bernie Sanders. Now it's even worse. It's a communist. Look, we have been communist for 100 years. Read the Communist Manifesto. Anyway, in chapter 4 of my book, I explain. I give you 6 books that you can read. By the time you read any one of them, you'll say, whoa. Wow, did I get a deficient education? I never knew Lincoln did this, said this, wrote this. Yeah. And it wasn't Lincoln. Lincoln was just a puppet.
Wow.
He always worked for the riverboat companies, and he always worked for the railroads. That was his legal practice. And you go and look at his background, and you see how he got in and all that. Oh, it looks a lot like Bush, George W. And Big Bush, Poppy. And it looks a lot like Obama. So you start seeing, wow, this has been, like you said earlier, Christina, this has been going on a long time. If you think this is the worst time, no. What I tell you in this book, this is the best time. In 5 generations, we haven't had this kind of power and this kind of ability to, A, assess the enemy, B, target the enemy, and C, defeat the enemy. Because now we know what the enemy is and how it works. Yeah. And we've got tons of stuff that's shown us exactly how it works. Now we're just dummies if we don't do it.
Yeah. And what's awesome about what you're doing is it allows us to be empowered as a people again, and to realize, because I know I hear right now during the political debates and such, one fighting against the other, your mama. Yeah, I mean, it's getting quite heated. But I try to bring people like, step away from your television. This is all propaganda to have you fighting against your fellow citizens. It's really set up to have us divided you fall. And they're really, what they're doing is keeping us separate so that we all fall. And
that's right.
We have to come together and realize that there's more that binds us together than separates us, and to stop fighting over one party over another, because both parties are working for the same people behind them. So this has been totally educational. Again, everyone can go to americaagain.net. Yes. And I want to thank you, David. This has been so informational. I hope everyone goes out there, at the very least, starts reading up, opening your mind to broaden it and see what's going on, and that you are empowered as your own citizen, as your own self, to take your own action, that you don't have to wait for someone else to do it. And again, David, I want to thank you for
coming out today and sharing your great wisdom and gift.
Thank you, Christina.
Here's an excerpt of our past interview with Abel James on living the best diet for your body.
Most people, especially in nutrition and fitness or health, they are dogmatic. They are telling you exactly what to do, and it's 100% right all the time. And, frankly, no one is 100% right all the time. And in fact, many people are quite wrong, as it turns out.
Wonderful point there, Abel, because early on when I was a kid, we ate loads, and I mean loads of margarine. And my grandma had heart problems, and she was told by her doctor, her heart doctor, that you must have margarine, it'll help. And now what are we hearing? Dr. Oz last year said on TV that this very substance, which we were told was so healthy, is actually clogging arteries. So, they were wrong, and now they've retracted it.
That's right.
But it's good to know that your show is really open to realizing that, hey, this is what we know right now. It could change, but we want to learn and continue to grow.
Exactly. That's how you move forward.
Exactly. So tell the listeners where they can listen to your show and find out more and get your book and all that jazz.
Yeah, the main hub is fatburningman.com. And if you put in your email address, you'll get a free ebook as well as access to my show and videos and all sorts of other fun stuff.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And would you say right now, Abel, that this is your greatest passion and why that's propelling you forward? What is it that wakes you up in the morning and gets you going?
It's funny. When I first started the podcast, I was I was still doing consulting, and I would get these emails from consulting people, my clients or people I was working with or my peers, and it would just be this, drudgery of something that I had to think through and respond to, and it's just it felt like a complete waste of time. And every time I thought about it, I dreaded it. And combine that with putting that next to it at the same time, I'm responding to these people who are just like, oh my God, Abel, I'm listening to your show. I've lost 40 pounds. My brother used to be diabetic, but now he changed his diet and he's not anymore. My mom lost 100 pounds. This has changed our lives. And it's just like, one of those emails I want to respond to and the other one I don't. And so I just, as soon as I realized that I was actually helping people, I'm like, I need to do this. I need to do this on a large scale. I need to help as many people as I possibly can, because, I mean, you just look around in America, at least, and in most countries that are following closely behind America, it's, when it comes to health and obesity, it's just an absolute mess. And so we need all the help we can get.
Most definitely. And sadly, people are living longer, but their quality of life is not necessarily better. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to live to 80 or 90 or even 100, but be in really awful quality of health.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and I love what you said there early on when you were starting your consulting business and you were like, but you wanted to respond to the people on your show. And for me, that was the same thing. I started a consulting business in accounting because that's what I'd done in corporate, and then started this show as a marketing tool for my consulting business. And wouldn't you know it, now this is my greatest passion. And it is something, Abel, when you finally converge and meet your passion, that things start flowing.
Oh my gosh, it's usually exponential once you start doing that, because it's not like you're squirreling yourself away into a dark corner and forcing yourself to work. It's like you love it. This is what you do. And so it doesn't feel like work anymore. I work and I don't work all the time. But it's nothing like what I used to do with my, somewhat normal job.
Oh, completely. I completely understand. So tell me, Abel, what would you say has been some of your greatest challenges you've faced in your business, and how did you overcome them?
There are a few. One that just happened like last week, 2 weeks ago now, was so this is kind of a technicality, but FeedBurner and Google Reader and those, they have been very important to reach people who consume content online. RSS is basically a way of subscribing to different blogs and podcasts and that sort of thing. And Google is phasing it out. And so basically I went to one of my employees and I asked him if he wouldn't mind helping me shift away from that into a different technology. And so basically he got on the phone with someone who was a tech from the company that we were switching to, away from FeedBurner. And basically he said, well, in order to move forward, you'll have to delete all of your RSS feeds, all of your FeedBurner feeds for your blog and your podcast. And he's like, are you sure about that? And he's like, yeah, just delete them. And so click. And he, in doing that, just deleted all of my audience through RSS, which was almost 100,000 people just gone, and broke my podcast at the same time. So my podcast stopped working and no one could access it at all. And so I was actually at a conference in Connecticut at that point. And so I just had my iPhone. And so I saw that social media was blowing up. Like everyone's like, Abel, where's your show? What happened? And I'm like, I don't know. So I called my employee and I kind of got the rundown. I'm just like, wait a second. Did you just delete my entire audience?
Oh my God.
And he's like, kinda. And so we were just scrambling for days, almost a full week, trying to get the show back up and trying to figure out a way to reach the audience again. And it gets really cool and crazy because when that happened, when people couldn't access the show, the Google traffic that I had went up 5-fold, and my email subscriptions went way up.
Wow.
And because people were basically just looking for me and looking for the show, and they went to, instead of RSS, they went to iTunes and clicked subscribe with my broken podcast that they couldn't download at such a rate. Like so many of them did that podcast hit #1 in Spain for the first time, even though no one could listen to it.
Wow.
So I think it's just, that was a challenge, and we were freaking out. I was pulling my hair out, and I could have seen it as the worst possible thing ever. But because we focus so much on just producing a high quality show and really having a good relationship with the people who listen on the other end, even missteps like that and things that could be, that's my entire business. I have 5 employees, and not being able to reach your whole audience is kind of an issue. But because you focus on if you focus on the right things and you keep trying to move forward and correct things. You can, kind of, to use an awful term, turn lemons into lemonade.
Oh, that's a great, great lesson. And it's true. As you go on in business, things will happen and you're like, okay, this is what we shouldn't do next time. But you live and learn and it makes you that much better. And who would have known that had this not happened, now you've got a whole bunch more people signed on. So it turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, very cool stuff.
Wow, that is totally awesome.
It was ridiculous. I could not believe it happened.
Wow. Well, several months ago, I think it was in February, my computer got a virus and crashed. And I had just recorded earlier that week a upcoming episode with someone, and they took their time that we took, I think, a 5 a.m. interview because they had to go off to travel somewhere.
Oh, wow.
And it was on that computer. And I was like, oh, no. So I lost everything on the whole computer, but luckily all the other stuff was saved onto my server except for that one interview that I just did with her. So I had to call her up, and she actually had to do it on the fly, while she was in motion on her cell phone, a quicker interview on the run just to help me out. But then it reminded me, get a flash drive and just carry that puppy around. Whenever you do an interview, just put it on there. God forbid anything happened to your computer, you got that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are other lessons there too. Like when I lost everything in the fire, I was working on a new CD, actually, all my audio and all my lyric notebooks. And my CD was triple backed up. I had 3 hard drives. And this was kind of like before cloud computing and that sort of thing. And so obviously lost everything and lost all my guitars. I had to cancel all my gigs. It was a huge mess. But another thing that it teaches you is that you just need to keep going. You need to keep producing content, and that's the thing that's going to keep you moving forward. So getting all caught up in the stuff that you lost, or I'm sure everyone remembers writing an email or writing a paper and then having your computer crash. You're three quarters of the way done with it, writing a paper or whatever, and it's gone forever. And the next time you have to write it again, it's like in your mind, it's never as perfect as it was the first time.
Yeah.
But as long as you fight through that, and as long as you keep producing great stuff and you focus on creation, then it doesn't matter. Like being tied to the stuff that worked out or didn't work out in the past is irrelevant as long as you keep just pushing forward.
Because what it is that you are the content. It doesn't matter if it goes away, you are it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who you've become is the content.
That's right. So what would you say as of this moment, I think just the podcast alone, but what would you say is your greatest achievement in your business so far or in your personal life?
I think in my business, it's I think this is my personal life too. It's the ability to create something that you believe in, like a microcosm of the world that you believe in. So for me, I hired almost exclusively from my fan base, which is super cool because they just believe in what you do from the get-go. And that's why they're interested, not because they want a job or because they want money. It's because they want to work with you and they want to work toward the same goal. And so I think one of my greatest achievements is building that sort of organization, which is my friends, and my girlfriend works with me, and like other people who are my employees are also my friends. And I don't call it I don't really call myself a boss. I don't call them employees typically. It's like we're all members of the same team. And I'm really proud of the work that we do and people that we have gathering together working toward this goal. And then personally, I think I'm proud to be someone who actually is putting a dent into the world in my own way with, the podcast and the blogs and the books that I've written and the speaking that I do and the music that I create, like pretty much everything. I want to be able to contribute something to society. And I'm happy to be doing that right now. And I hope to do a lot more of it in the future.
And I just heard another lesson or something that other business owners can take with them there, that if you're looking for someone to help you in your business, find someone that also believes in your vision.
That's the most important thing. It really is, because what you put on your resume doesn't matter. How much money you make doesn't matter if they believe in the vision and they believe in what you do.
I couldn't agree more. That is awesome. So what, as of this moment and your experience with working with different people, what have you seen as some of the biggest mistakes new business owners make, and how could they avoid some of those pitfalls?
They don't treat it like a business. So at the beginning, when you're learning or when you're starting something new, it's important to treat it like an investment. If you want to have a website, then paying, $67 for a professional looking website theme is something that you should definitely do. Bootstrapping is cool, but having those little expenditures, as long as they're responsible, is really important, and it can save you a heck of a lot of time. So what I see a lot of people do when they're first starting is just like getting nowhere because they don't pay $5 on Fiverr to have someone who is a graphic designer come up with a logo for them. They try to like do every single thing themselves. And it's something that I did. It's something that I love to do though. I just like learning how to.